What's going on, everybody? My name is Eric Velasquez, and this is Alamo City Agenda. We are here at the beautiful Trailblazer Cafe at Stinson. So you can see that by the airplanes behind us. So it's pretty awesome. It's a little bit gloomy, but we know it's going to get hot, right? So we're here with City Council District number 5, candidate Rudy Lopez. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Good. Thank you for having me out today.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us, you ran before.
I did.
Now you're running again. What was that motivation to go, you know what, I'm going to go it again. I'm going to do it again.
You know, first of all, it's a service to my community. I've been working with my community as a neighborhood leader for over 10 years now. And it's that desire to want to serve the people in our community and for the betterment of our community in District 5. You know, and in all honesty, the loss wasn't by that much when I ran against the present council member. So that was also part of the motivation. But I think first and foremost, it's just wanting to serve our community.
Gotcha. So I'm going to get right into it. You had a lot of backing by apartments and bigger, corporations of like housing and stuff like that. I think it seemed like it was a direct retaliation against the current council member. So, I mean, what's your take on the whole apartment situation and the apartment industry itself?
Right. You know, the backing came from many places, and yes, it includes a lot of the apartment associations and some of the real estate folks, right? But again, that's just backing. There was no promises made. There's never any promises made. And at one point, I told some of the folks that were making donations that I might not agree with them all the time. You know, they might want to have things done, but just because you're giving me a donation doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want all the time. And of course, they know that it takes more than one vote on council, right? So they know that if I didn't agree with them, that they could also go around to other council members. It takes 6 votes, right?
Yeah.
But the important thing is to remember that it's not about just the apartment association and the real estate companies, right? It's about the people that live in the neighborhoods and what the people in the neighborhoods want and need. But it's always important to give everybody a place at the table, regardless, right? We need to listen to everybody and make our best decisions based on that.
Right. So how do you give the people the confidence to say, look, I believe Rudy is going to look out for us and not the apartment industries or the real estate companies that backed you? Like, how can you just give them that confidence to vote for you?
Well, pretty simply put, I've been a neighborhood association president for 10 years. And first and foremost, I've always listened to the people in my neighborhood and what they want. You know, I've had several developers come across to me, and what may sound like a great idea to me and to them isn't always a great idea to the people in the neighborhood. And I've got to listen to those people and what they want in their neighborhoods. It's not, yeah, it is my neighborhood, but it's their neighborhood
Right,
too,
yeah.
right? But it's also, it's not the neighborhood of developers and real estate and apartment associations. There's people that live there.
Yeah.
And we got to care about the people that live there. So first and foremost, they need to come in and have their input. At the end of the day, everybody else goes home and we stay in our neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
So I guarantee you that all the decisions I've ever made as a president of a neighborhood association, and if I make it for a city council, will be because of the input from our neighborhoods and our community.
What's your take on the fact that some people say districts like District 5, District 3, District 4, District 2 don't have many things going on as far as development goes, as far as, hospitals go, even voting, because of the fact that, not voting, but because of the fact that people don't vote in those districts. Do you believe in that statement, or do you think that there's something else that?
So that's like 2 or 3 part question there.
Yeah, sorry.
So first of all, you're talking about development, and we need to be real careful with development. A lot of other people know that District 5 has, especially the 78207 area, that's one of the poorest areas in the city. So we need to be careful about development. We need to make wise development so that people are getting the amenities that they need, the work that they need. I mean, but we need to make sure that we're not pushing people out.
Yeah.
So we need to just look at it very carefully and hit it with a scalpel and look at every detail to make sure that we're not chasing people out. But we also don't want a stagnated neighborhood or community where nothing happens, because that's the worst thing for a neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
That means infrastructure is not getting done. That means that roads aren't being fixed. I was driving down Guadalupe Street the other day, and nothing changes. Everything's the same. And part of that, I think, is the fear of development. But like I said, we've got to dissect it very carefully and make sure that we are bringing some kind of development in and infrastructure change, but also protecting the people that live there.
Right. Let me ask you, how do you protect the people that live there, protect the culture without it getting out of hand, like as far as development? Because, when you go drive down there, you drive down even on the south side, you're like, oh man, like I remember this place. Like it brings back memories and everything, and you remember home, and it feels like, okay, it hasn't changed. It's cool. But how do you get people past that? Because a lot of people don't like change, right? A lot of people don't like that. But people also want things to get a little bit better, but they don't want their culture to change either.
Yeah, well, you're asking two totally questions that go hand in hand. Change happens.
Yeah.
Right. We know that change happens, and it's going to happen. But it's up to us as leaders to make sure that the culture is still there. It's we were talking about this the other day, and preserving the culture is. It's in us, because, I've been on the West Side for 3 to 4 generations now. And I guarantee you that I'm not exactly the way my grandparents were, right? But the love for the culture is still in me. I don't speak Spanish every day. They spoke Spanish every day. Yeah, I don't listen to boleros every day, right? But I love boleros. The culture's there, it's just changing a little bit, right? I'm sure you feel the same way. You think back about what your grandparents and your parents did, and you're not exactly the way they were, but the love of the culture is in you, right?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're preserving that culture, but we're also looking forward to the change that comes with the culture. And so ways to preserve that is to look at how we can teach our kids about the culture, Hispanic culture, the West Side culture. But realize at the same time that there's other people coming into the community that we need to teach the culture to. Yeah. And at the same time, be very accepting of other people's cultures, because diversity is incredible.
Yeah.
I love diversity, and we need diversity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I think slowly we've been starting to see a little bit, and it's really cool. So we got those harder questions out of the way. How was your weekend?
Well, my weekend was it's busy. It's a lot of block walking. And it's funny you talk about the culture, because I was block walking on let's see if I can remember the name of the street. It was Potosi. And I came across a barbecue benefit plate sale, and instantly I thought about my family, because everybody was outside with their canopies and listening to the oldies but goodies music, and thought about all my tios and tias that would sit outside. I had an uncle that would play the guitar, and they'd all be out there having beer and playing guitar and singing. And so it was good to see that on the West Side, right? But my weekends are spent a lot of block walking, getting out there and talking to people and trying to find out. Yeah, it's getting really hot. It's getting really, really hot. But it's just getting out there and trying to find out what the concerns of the people are, and being able to communicate with them and understand them and know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
One important thing is my Spanish has gotten really, really good, right? Because so many people out there that only speak Spanish. So thank God for mom and dad. Mom only spoke Spanish when we were growing up, and dad spoke English and Spanish. So I'm privileged enough to know both languages and fairly well, I would say. But just getting out there the weekends and just block walking and talking to people. I think the most incredible thing about actually running for an office is the fact that you get to talk to so many people and the diversity in people and the concerns in people and the ideas that people have, and just being able to just soak that all in as part of the knowledge of what you're gaining from just speaking to people and just being a part of their lives.
Yeah, definitely. So we have Brenda this morning sharing. Thank you, Brenda, for sharing. Robin says good morning. Hello, Robin. So tell us about the district that you're hearing from the community that they're saying that, or what they're saying. So
I think crime. Number one is crime. The crime seems to have gotten so bad in the district, and people are they're just tired. They're tired of the crime. They want something done. We actually ran the numbers, and the crime in District 5 for the past 2 years has actually doubled, especially in domestic violence. Domestic violence has gone up so much. And so number one is crime. The other thing I'm hearing a lot about is, and it comes back to public safety, is I'm hearing a lot about the gentleman, Mr. Naranje, that was mauled to death by the pet bulls off of Depot Street, which actually is in my neighborhood in the Thompson community. Oh, wow. I'm hearing a lot about that, and why was it not ever taken care of after 114 calls to different city departments, after 2 people were bitten, and
that many?
2 people were bitten before him. So, there's people asking, where was the failure at? Why did it happen? Why don't we have more ACS officers? Why don't we have officers responding to calls when people are calling? And so public safety. I mean, the one thing, and it's really weird because I hear this all the time too from people in the district when I'm block walking, gunshots. Gunshots. Yeah. I was talking to a lady that heard some gunshots the other day, and she says, yeah, I was cutting the grass, or I was working in the yard, something like that. She said, I heard 4 or 5 gunshots, and I just kept going. What's really upsetting about that is it's become normal. And I understand her because I hear them in my neighborhood too, and sometimes I'm like, it wasn't close this time, so just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, right. But really, that needs to be addressed, and it shouldn't be a norm in any district, any part of the city, right? I think that one of the things that caught me not too long ago is, if you remember, over at the Castellano courts, there was 2 ladies that were fighting, and one of them got run over and killed, right? When they did an interview with one of the kids there, they're like, it happens all the time.
And nobody says anything.
Nobody says anything. How does this become normal? It's upsetting that this becomes normal with kids. It shouldn't be normal with kids.
Well, I wonder if it's because they don't trust the police department, or they don't want somebody to get arrested. Because that happened to me on the way to one of the interviews. There was a young couple fighting, and they had to be in high school. And they were fighting or whatever, and then the cops came. The boyfriend took off. He didn't have to. He didn't do anything wrong. He took off, and all of a sudden, they both got arrested. And it's right. I think there's that fear, but I don't know. I think in younger generations, that I believe there's that fear of calling the police.
That's interesting you said that with younger generations. And there shouldn't be a fear, right? I mean, because we're paying police officers to protect us, right? And that's their job and that's their duty, to protect us. Now, what that situation was exactly, I don't know. But I can tell you that walking through many parts of the West Side, and in District 5. It's our older generation that's scared,
Yeah.
and they want the police. They need the police. They're scared to come out.
Yeah.
It's something else to me when you walk to the district, and you probably know this as well as I do when you walk through District 5. You walk to the south side of the district, a lot of houses don't have fences, but you get to the inner west side and everything's gated up and locked up. And what does that tell me? That tells me that a lot of people are just scared to come out. You know, they can't leave their gate open. They can't come. They don't come out. But again, I think the culture has changed. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I'm 53 years old, right? I'm a Gen X. So I think I see the police department a little bit different than younger people do. And maybe that's because I didn't see all the things that they see now.
Yeah.
You know, the social media's blown up.
Right.
Right. So when I was growing up, mom and dad taught me to respect authority. Right. Now, I'm not saying that that's the perfect thing to do.
Right.
Because everybody needs to be held accountable for what they do. But at the end of the day, we want our public safety officers to help us, protect us, and bring safety to our neighborhoods.
Right. Yeah. So on that aspect, where are you at with the Prop A situation?
You know, I'm straight out and honest. I'm against Prop A, and I'll tell you why. There's certain things in the proposition that if they were separated out, I would probably say yes, yes, no, no, no.
Right.
Right. But when you put it all in one package and it's a none or all decision, then I'm going to say no. You know, there's one part of the proposition that I don't like, and that's the misdemeanor offense levels. So right now, if you, and that would be the theft of services,
750,
criminal mischief, and the graffiti. So it's going from $100. The offense is going from $100 to $750. I get it. I understand that most of the people who are committing the crimes are poor and brown. And so they live with consequences for the rest of their lives. However, when you stop and you think about it, the victims themselves are more than likely what color and poor, right? They're going to be brown and they're going to be poor too. Can they afford to have something taken from their yard, something in their house vandalized at $750?
Yeah.
They can't. I guarantee you that when I walk through the inner west side, most of those people, they live day by day.
Yeah.
Right? Now, our small businesses, $750 a pop over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Guess what? They're not going to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
There's big industry stores, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS. They're sure they can take that. But our mom and pop stores can't take that. And so if you're trying to close down our small businesses, that's a good way to do it. Now we get to the graffiti, which is up to $2,500 now. The price that it's going to cost to cover up that graffiti for a business or for a homeowner is going to be exorbitant now. It's going to cost you a lot because now the officer can't really do anything except give that person a ticket or, you know, slap them on the head.
Right.
The bad part about it is with graffiti, you know as well as I do that if the property owner doesn't clean it up, what happens? They get a fine. They get a ticket. So who's going to help those property owners? At the end of the day, it's not a really good prop. The peace and justice charter is what it's called, right? Mm-hmm. Again, like I said, there's parts and pieces of it that I might vote for. But anything that's hurting the community and anything that's hurting people, it's not gonna fly with me, because I look out for my community first. I look out for the people first, the people who are going to be victims, and we need to protect them.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, and that's been the common occurrence that I've heard from several people that that's the biggest thing. That's like, red X. You're like, nope, we're not doing that.
Exactly.
What was that first step in candidacy? I know. Let's go back. What was it, 3 years ago? Was it 3 years? Or
Just almost 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So what was that first step? You're like, you know what? Let me go ahead and I'm gonna run for office. What was that mindset of going in?
Wow. It actually happened quite a few years ago. That's when Shirley Gonzalez was in office. I think it was her last term. And we were at a seminar over at San Antonio College for the rezoning throughout the city that they're doing through the SA Tomorrow program. And what that does, it looks at all the properties or districts and neighborhoods throughout the city. And it looks at what the zoning should be, or the land use rather. They say land use, still zoning, right? They look at it through neighborhoods to make sure that it complies with what it should be. In other words, you might have a whole row of houses that are an R6 or an R4. And then right in the middle, you might have something that's commercial, zone commercial, right? Well, that doesn't fit with the neighborhood.
Right.
And it's probably something you don't want in the neighborhood, right? So it's looking at all those areas and making sure that they conform to what those neighborhoods should be. So I was there with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how we didn't like the way that the city was handling this SA Tomorrow and the land use. And I was sitting there complaining. And she says to me, why don't you just run for city council? And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think I'll consider that. At the time, I didn't do it. But when Shirley Gonzalez came out, I said, this is the time to do it.
Gotcha.
This is the time to do it. So that's kind of what motivated me, is the way the city works, the way that citizens are treated, and how we need to be looking out for the folks in San Antonio and in District 5, and making sure that we're being listened to. So that was my first step. That's when I decided that I would go ahead and give this a try.
Yeah, definitely. I always like hearing people's how they got to that point, because it's always, it seems like it's like all right, I'm tired of this. I don't want to just sit in the stands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, and I think that's part of politics. Is you realize, or you don't realize, that as much as we hate to be politicians and we hate politics, it's part of life, right? And it's part of a very important function of government, so that we make sure that people are being listened to.
How do you get people motivated to vote? Like, what do you want to do to get people to vote?
I'm going to ask you that question. How do you get people to vote? Because if you look at the numbers, when there's 2,000 voters in a precinct and only 300 come out, there's a problem.
Right.
People aren't coming out. I think a lot of people are just disenchanted with politicians and politics, right? And so they've just given up. How do we get them to change that mindset and not give up, and know that every vote counts, every voice counts? How do we do that? And that's the one question that I think everybody's asking. How do we do that? Because in all honesty, I don't know how to do that besides knocking at door to door and asking people to come out and vote. It's a huge district. And I don't think I'll be able to cover all the doors. But I truly, truly wish that everybody would come out and vote. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, your vote is your voice. And if you want change in your community, you need to come out and vote.
Yeah. And we've seen with like District 10, District 9, there's a lot of people that come out, decent amount. And you notice that those districts get funding, they get infrastructure, they get all these things, but the districts that don't vote, they don't have hospitals. You look at District 2, I don't know of a hospital down there.
Yeah,
district.
and as a matter of fact, we're losing a hospital down here on the south side, the
Right.
Southwest General Hospital. That's a huge loss for that community,
Yeah,
right?
there's a problem there.
There is a problem there, but you're talking about districts 9 and 10, and I'll tell you this: as a president of the neighborhood association, if when you go to neighborhood association meetings, or you go to town halls in those areas, people come out.
Yeah,
They come out. I know that with my neighborhood association, I'm blessed because I have people that come out. Um, Shirley Gonzalez used to use a term all the time, which was the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? That means when more people come out and they scream and they make their voices known and heard,
right.
those are people that get results.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't get those voices coming out in parts of District 5. Again, like I said, I think there's just so many people who are just disenchanted with politics and with politicians, and they've given up. And so they'll settle for what they get, and what they have, and not what they deserve. I think a lot of people out there, you walk through District 5. I mean, I've walked parts of District 5 where there's no sidewalks, right?
Yeah.
And I'm walking on the street. I've walked parts of District 5 where there's more water in people's yards than there is in the streets when it rains. And those are the people that need to come out and speak up. Because at the end of the day, those squeaky wheels will get the oil.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're bringing everybody into the loop and make sure that they're being heard and that they're not afraid to speak up.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of this show, is just to try to have everybody accessible to the public. And if they want to ask a question, they can ask a question, or, just get an idea of who's running. So, what's your favorite small business in the rest of the district?
My favorite small business, well, okay, so there's several. And in my neighborhood, it's going to be everybody goes to Rocky's Taco House, right? For the carne asada tacos. Then there's the Arizona Cafe for their menudo and barbacoa tacos. But I think that one of my favorite places, and it's not there anymore, and I hated to see it go, was the, it was right there off of Guadalupe, Mr. Peace. It's off of Guadalupe, close to Navidad.
Oh, really?
And so he served the best brisket tacos and the best turkey salad sandwiches. But like many other small businesses, the customer base wasn't there for him, and so he had to close up. I hate to see small startup businesses closing up. But I think part of the problem was that he was in a community that really can't afford to be coming out all the time and paying for brisket tacos and those really good burgers that he was making. So how do we get that money into the community? How do we get those folks into the community to support our small businesses? That's the question, right? How do we do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a difficult one.
It's a difficult one because as well as I do that the folks who would be able to afford that are what we're going to call gentrifiers, right? So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. How do you get some of that money into the community without hurting the people, but also supporting our small businesses?
Yeah. I mean, you I'll be honest, there'll be sometimes I paid for like $8 for a taco because it's, it's presented differently.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's like, then you have these mom and pop shops that are, it's $1.50, or it's just something super cheap. And, you have these people that are, practically eye gouging you, because it looks fancy or whatever. But
yeah,
it's a culture of, well, we don't want to disenfranchise our people either, No,
you don't want to disenfranchise the people. But at the same time, we need to figure out a way to revitalize a community without hurting that community. And what is the answer? I can think of a few things, but I would much rather have the people that live in that community come to me and think give us what their thoughts are on how to do that without hurting anybody in the community. I think everybody's voice should be at the table. from the people that live in that community to the people who want to come in and do something in that community.
Yeah.
So that we're not hurting either our small businesses or the people that live in that community. But if we don't do something, nothing ever changes.
Well, and let's be honest, a lot of those small business owners they don't want to ask for help. We saw that during COVID. They didn't know how to ask for help.
That's what I was going to say. It's not that they weren't asking for help; they were asking for help. They just didn't know how to get the help.
Right, and then a lot of times too, it's because their books aren't up to date, or all that stuff didn't add up, and that was the biggest thing too. Is and then all the money got taken up by other people that were on the website.
The people who knew how to get on the computer and knew how to finagle their way through it, even if their books weren't quite right. They knew how to finagle their way through it, and they got that money. No, you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of our small businesses, a lot of our small mom and pop businesses, they didn't have the resources that they needed to apply, and they didn't have the help that they needed to figure out the books, right?
Right.
And I think that was a huge failure on our government's part. Our local government, that we didn't reach out enough to these mom and pop stores, these small businesses, to make sure that they were getting the money that they deserved just as much as was. I think a big business like Walmart or something got.
Well, Thomas J. Henry got 10 million. Thomas J.
Henry, yeah,
10 million.
So Thomas J. Henry knows how to do it, right? The mom and pop stores don't know how to do it, and we should have been there to help them. And the problem is that money's gone now.
Yeah,
it's gone.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's up to us. It's incumbent upon us as neighborhood leaders like me, our city council members, our Barrow County commissioners, to reach out to those small businesses and make sure that those businesses are staying afloat and they're getting the money that they deserve through those funds that were provided to them. And it just didn't happen, right? I know that Fernandez Restaurant on Guadalupe Street, they weren't able to get the funding that they needed, and they barely stayed afloat. They barely stayed afloat. They weren't able to. They were able to stay open, but just by the nick of their teeth, right? And now they're doing better. But Fernandez Restaurant or Cafe, they didn't get the help that they needed. And it's a fantastic place to go to and eat.
Yeah, well, especially to survive during COVID era, because COVID really messed a lot of people up. Even some good businesses, but so go support small business.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Support your small businesses. I'm a big believer in our small businesses, and we need to make sure that we're that we're actually going to our small businesses.
Yeah. And if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the comments. Feel free to jump in. Come over here to Trailblazer Cafe. Have some awesome scenery in the background.
I haven't had anything to eat yet, but
me either.
Really
I'm like, I saw the pictures. I'm like, oh, they have some cakes. I'm like, oh man. And then just give me a thumbs up if everything sounds good on y'all's end, because just want to make sure, because I'm doing this without headphones. So, yeah. How are you going to prevent the struggles of construction? Because we're seeing that all around the city right now with construction. They're shutting down Broadway and all that.
Right. I think a good example of that in District 5 is the Golden Star Cafe. I know the owners there, Bo Lim, and it has been a struggle for her to bring customers in because of all this construction going on around her. And I think that was a failure on the city's part to make sure that this got done, and it got done in a timely fashion, right? There should have been a fallback for her where the city would help her make up some of the losses that she's going through at this time. And I think the city is actually doing that now.
Yeah, they only did like 35,000.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot, but for a small business.
It's not a lot for a small business at all. But making sure the construction is done, it's done right, and done quickly is going to be the key. Because it's got to be done right. We've got to fix streets. We've got to fix sidewalks. But we've also got to make sure that we're not hurting our businesses
Yeah, it's okay.
Especially our legacy businesses. The Golden
Yeah.
Star's been there for 90 years.
Yeah, I
90
remember.
years.
Oh,
That's a legacy business,
yeah.
and we should be promoting them and not hurting them.
Yeah.
And so it's those things that we need to be watching out for. And how do you do that? Like I said, you need to just make sure that these contractors are on time with the work, and that it's not going on for, I think, with the Golden Star, it's been more than a year that they've been
Yeah.
doing construction around them,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't have happened that way. And they're hanging on, but
Yeah.
I'm sure this is, at some point and someday, everybody wants to retire, right?
Yeah.
And so for people that, like at the Golden Star, the owners, when they're having to dip into their own money to pay their employees, that's putting
Yeah.
them back further on when they can actually say, hey, I've done this long enough, right?
Right.
So again, the answer is just to make sure that these people who are being contracted are on time and that they're getting things done the right way. Working with those businesses to make sure that they're still getting their customers in. I think for a long time with the Golden Star, there was just no direction on how to get to their parking lot just to get in to eat. And even then, it was a
Yeah.
nightmare just to get there because of all the construction going on.
Right.
But we need to make sure that they're still getting their customer base that they need to stay afloat.
Yeah. You're seeing that with Broadway. I know Broadway is a whole different animal because you have
Okay.
TxDOT and all that.
Oh yeah.
It's a mess. So the CPS rate hike, are you going to be for or against it?
I've got to look into that a little bit more and what the hike is going to be like. Fortunately, I've got a friend that I can talk to about this. Her name is Jenny Martinez, and she just became the president of the CPS board. At the end of the day, these hikes are going to hurt people, so we need to make sure that we're not hurting people.
Yeah.
Again, I understand that the operating costs have to be taken care of as well. San Antonio's grown, and if you've lived in San Antonio all your life, you see the growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with anything else, you need to build the infrastructure. You need to make sure that we have the labor force to take care of that infrastructure and the customers. And sometimes that means hikes will happen, but as long as it's not something that's way past people's means and it's not hurting people, then it's going to happen. And short story real quick. I don't know how old you are. How old you are, but
I am. How old am I? Oh, I turned 40 in December.
Okay, yeah, you're still pretty young. But we were talking about this the other day about how when I was growing up, Ingram Park Mall was way out there.
Yeah.
There was nothing past Ingram Park Mall. But you drive out there now, and it's just construction, homes, people moving in. And that's the same thing if you go down Highway 90 down to Castroville, Texas.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's all connected now. And somebody has to, pay for that. Of course, the people that are out there are paying for it too. But, depending on what the hikes are needed for, then I would vote for it or against it. If it's just to put money in people's pockets, then that's not a very good thing, right?
Yeah.
But if it's for infrastructure and it's to make sure that the power grid is up and it's working, then it's one of those horrible things that we don't want, but we're going to have to pay for.
Even if you put.
But remember, there is going to be they're going to lower the rates a little bit with SAWS.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing with the CPS. I know people have been so mad at CPS and the bonuses and the delayed cost that they're having to pay for Snowvin and all that stuff. But, even if you put a hospital in like a poor neighborhood or somewhere near, so that way they can at least be on the hospital grid so they don't lose power like they did. It's because we had a lot of people that suffer and a lot of elderly and people that passed away.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're on the south side right now, and of course the south side is losing Southwest General Hospital. Where are they going to go to now? It did have a trauma center. It had an emergency room trauma center. Now, the closest thing to them is over by Brook City Base, where they need to go all the way downtown. or
to,
off of 151.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have to do that. There should be something close to them. I mean, we do have the Baptist emergency room, but it's not a trauma center either. You know, so those are things that we need to look at, and those are the things that I think our county commissioners need to look at and decide how we're going to handle that, because everyone deserves to have a hospital close enough to them to where they can use it when it's an emergency, when they need it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that's kind of frustrating is they're pushing really hard for this baseball stadium downtown. It's like, is that really like a priority right now? Like, should it be?
Yeah, and I hear you on that. For the baseball fans, it probably is. Right?
Yeah.
It's probably is a priority for the baseball fans. No, I mean, truly, we need to look at the needs of the people, and we need to make sure that people are being kept healthy and that we're meeting people's emergencies. And at the end of the day, they're the taxpayers. We need to give the taxpayers what they are asking for. And that's one of the things that I believe about City Hall. I think that City Hall has turned very political on big agendas. And we need to step away from that and do what City Hall is supposed to do. City Hall is here to serve the taxpayers. What do the taxpayers pay for? Taxpayers pay for streets, sidewalks, curbs, drainage, lighting, and of course, public safety. We need to make sure we're delivering those services. I mean, you don't put your trash can out and have somebody pick it up 3 weeks later, right? Because you're paying for that.
Yeah.
That's your service. You deserve that. So we need to make sure that City Hall starts moving away from all these big political items. And City Hall does what City Hall is supposed to do, and that's deliver services to the people who are paying them to do it.
Right. So with that, what's your take on the eminent domain?
So eminent domain, you know, it's got its good side and it's got its bad side, right? If eminent domain is being used just to help big corporations set up, then that's wrong. If eminent domain is being used to build a hospital on the south side for the people, that's not wrong, because it's something that's going to serve the people. If eminent domain is being used the right way, I don't see anything wrong with it. I know that a lot of people are going to jump on me because they're property owners and they don't want their properties taken away. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if it's being used, and it's going to get used, well, there's no way around that, right? As long as it's being used to serve the people and not just the corporations and a small group of people, it's important that we're helping neighborhoods and we're helping people first, and they should always come first.
Well, and there was only 2 council people that voted against the recent one for Moses Rose's, the tavern. Mm-hmm. So in that situation, would you have voted yes or no?
You know, Moses Rose's has been there for quite some time, but if I remember correctly, with Moses Rose's, they were given quite over the asking price of what he wanted. And he kept going up and up. But is that a reason for eminent domain? I would say that it's not. It's his property. We need to work with him. But anytime eminent domain happens, we need to make sure that we're also being fair to those property owners and giving them what they deserve for their property. I mean, he's worked there forever, right? He's been there for some time, and he's put a lot of time, sweat, and money into that property.
Right.
So if it is going to happen, we need to make sure that we're also giving that property owner what he deserves, and not just what he deserves, but what's right.
All right. Gotcha. Okay. What are your thoughts on utility disconnections? What should there be like a limit or?
Well, I guess we got to look at it a case-by-case basis, right? You don't want to turn off electricity on a person that has a medical problem where they're reliant on the power to keep alive, right?
Yeah.
We got to look at each case by case. You don't want to turn the power off on a family of 6 people that are barely making it, but we need to make sure that we're also having programs out there reaching out to those people who are, at risk of being turned off, their power turned off, to make sure that we have programs out there to help them. But at the end of the day, if I'm making $72,000 a year and I'm not paying my bill,
Right.
and if I'm not paying my bill, who's going to pay for it?
Right.
That's going to get spread out.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, we need to look at it a case by case basis. A mother of 4 that's just working by herself might not be able to make it, but the guy that's making $72,000 to $100,000 a year, or big corporations for that matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If they're not paying, then absolutely we need to make sure that they're doing their part, because they can afford it.
Yeah, like personal accountability. Just like,
but
can't just, I'm not going to pay.
I'm just not going to pay. Yeah,
if
you can pay, you need to pay. But
right.
Again, it's a case by case basis. But like I said, at the end of the day, if those bills don't get paid, CPS needs to charge somebody, because you know what? CPS doesn't make power just by pulling air out of the atmosphere, right? They got to pay for what it makes to have that power generated and put into our homes. And if somebody's not paying, and they should be paying, then at the end of the day, you and I are going to make up that loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that whole aspect of, well, we don't want to be paying for somebody who's just doesn't want to do it. You know what I mean?
Well,
none of us want to.
I don't want to pay. I saw my bill the other day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's. Yeah. But you know what? I need to pay it.
Yeah.
I need to pay it, and I understand. I mean, I can do it. It's got to be paid, and I can do it. But I understand that there's also people out there who are struggling. But that's why I said we need to make sure that we have those safety nets out there to help those people.
Right.
I can say that, and she's probably going to hate me for this, but there's times when my sister's electric bill comes out really high, and she's working a job that doesn't pay a whole lot. But thankfully, she's always been able to work with CPS, where she can make partial payments and make payments later on. And her power's never been turned off. And that's one of those things, is we need to make sure that people also understand that don't just ignore it.
Yeah. It's not going to just go away.
Don't just ignore it, but reach out to CPS. Yeah. CPS has programs where they can help you.
Right.
And the city has programs where they can help you. So does the county, for that matter. But don't just ignore it. The worst thing to do is just ignore it. I mean, I wish I could do that with my credit card bills, just ignore it. But,
right. Or property taxes. Oh, sorry, I'm going to get up.
Yeah, absolutely. Property taxes. That's a whole other monster.
So what do you think we can do with these property taxes?
There's only so much you can do at the city level, right? I mean, the reliefs we give, they're good, but they're not immense, and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah,
our property taxes are the highest portion of our property taxes are school taxes. And this is going to go up and up and up, because school taxes go up because the funding from the state's not coming down to the schools. So to make up that loss, of course, they're going to raise our taxes. So we need to be pushing our elected officials at the state level to make sure that more money is coming down to the school districts, to make sure that those property taxes don't go up. But I also think we need to start holding our school districts more accountable too. Where's the money going to? What are you spending it on? What's your student ratio?
Like Harlandale, they're closing a couple of schools now.
Yeah, they're closing a couple of schools. But, actually, I think it's 4 schools.
4?
It's 4 schools. And Edgewood's had to do that as well. They've closed a few schools too. But that's a whole other monster, property taxes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take one person. It takes a village, right, to make those changes. And it's going to start from the top down.
Well, I'm glad that the city is now finally doing classes or things to show people how to protest their taxes.
Right.
Should have been done a while back,
And that's one of those things I've always pushed for with my neighborhood association. Actually, As a matter of fact, this Tuesday, we have the Bexar County Appraisal District coming in to talk to our neighborhood association. Now, this portion of the Bexar County Appraisal District actually comes in and shows you how to do your protests. Yeah, you got two sections. You got one that's flat out, this is what you're paying, and then you've got the other section that's of the Bexar County Appraisal District under Amesquita that goes out and says, this is how you do your protest, this is how long you get to do it, and these are things that you need to look at and that we're looking for. Right.
And he's a really cool dude. I had him on. We did a property tax thing back in 2020. They said that was the most engagement they've ever had. I was like, are you serious? Like, just doing that. And I'm like, okay. So I think that hopefully, it kind of motivated them to like do these online things or go and do these things in person, because people are asking questions left and right. Hey, what about this? Yeah,
it's incredible all the things that you need to look at when you're protesting, and that could be anything from the cracks in your wall, right, and the condition of your neighbors' homes. The number of police calls in your neighborhood, all of that brings down the appraisal. All of that brings down the price of your home. So
in a good way.
In a good way when you're looking for it, because you don't want the appraisal to go down so much that you've lost money on your home, right? And that would be horrible. That was the housing crash a few years ago. I remember my sister bought her house, and she does well. She bought her house for about $500,000. And but during the housing crash, she was thinking of selling her house, but the most she could sell it for was $350,000.
Yeah.
So you don't want that to happen either.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people get confused. Huh? Rosemary. Oh, hi, Rosemary. How are you? If you want to ask a question, step on up if you want to. No, you can right here. I got the mic right here. No, go ahead. Do it. Okay. Hi, hello. How are you?
I'm sorry. Your name is Rosemary. Hi, Rosemary. Okay, my name is John Martinez. Pleasure to meet you.
We're descendants of the missions. Canary Island descendants.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Well, my name is Rudy Lopez. I'm running for City Council in District 5.
I think this is
No. Yeah, the 2 years ago, the one from Pika Pika.
Yes. Okay, so you're not.
I'm not that Rudy Lopez. It's funny you say that, because when I was running, I got a text message from a lady that was. No, because I only do one finger.
One finger. Hey, copyright.
When I was running a few years ago, I got a lady that was really, really upset about the ballroom she had rented, and she was just ranting and raving on this text or on my website. And so I had to go on there and say, I think you have the wrong Rudy. I wish I had all those ballrooms and a flea market, but I don't. So you need to call the other Rudy.
Yeah, that was a confusing time. I remember seeing that. I was like, wait a minute, there's two Rudys?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you can't run in two different districts.
No, you can't. There you go.
No, but tell us, what does your playlist look like? Like your musical playlist? What
oh my God. God, it's I'm all over the spectrum with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'll listen. Of course, I'm a Gen Xer, so I every morning I'll listen to my 80s music. For some reason or another, yesterday I was in the mood to put on the Grease soundtrack. Listen to the Grease soundtrack while I was trying to get breakfast.
What's a good soundtrack? You're like, this is a solid soundtrack.
It depends on the mood.
Okay, yeah,
it depends on the mood. If I'm in a happy mood, the good soundtrack again would be Grease. If it's one of those mornings or days where I just need to zone out a little bit, love Yanni.
Okay.
Love Yanni and listening to Yanni, because I think that just kind of calms me down a little bit, brings me down a little bit. And a lot of people aren't going to believe this, but I need God in my life. Hence the cross.
We all need some Jesus.
Hence the cross, right? I need some Jesus in my life. So my radio station usually is on K-Love.
Okay. Yeah. Which was a good soundtrack that I stumbled upon, the Forrest Gump one.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I was like, ooh, I got the vinyl. And I was like, okay, do you do any vinyl?
Okay, so yes, I do.
Hey, that's okay.
Yes,
It's
I
coming
do.
back.
I actually have some vinyl albums. I've got REO Speedwagon.
Okay.
I found some the other day for Journey. Oh my God, Journey on vinyl is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do, and believe it or not, I found a box of 45s that my dad had, and so the first one that I picked up was, I can't remember who the singer was, but do you remember the song Wooly Bully?
Yeah.
That's the first one I picked
Nice.
up on that 45. You remember the 45s?
Yes, the smaller
The
ones.
small ones, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're making a comeback, so
Yeah, they are making a comeback.
I'm like, they're starting to sell those
Yeah,
again.
the sound on vinyl is something
Oh,
different completely.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, I don't like the newly pressed ones. Like, I'm like, I like to old ones and stuff like that. So, but yeah. So tell everybody how to get a hold of you, how to donate, how to help Block Walk.
Wow. Well, you can also look me up on Facebook. It's Vote Rudy Lopez on Facebook. And my website is Rudy Lopez for City Council.
Okay.
I can always use help for block walking. I'll be extremely honest that I am probably the poorest candidate out there, right? So I can't afford to be paying people all the time for block walking. Thankfully, and it says a lot for a person, right? When the block walkers that I've had so far are friends and family and people that live in District 5. It's really important for me that we have people working with me that live in District 5 and understand the people and the culture, or at least vested in District 5.
Right.
So fortunately for me, all the people that are block walking for me are people that live in District 5 and know District 5. And those are volunteers. So yes, I'm always looking for volunteers. You can always go to my website, or you can go to my Facebook and send me a message if you're willing to help to block walk. And same way for donations. I'm always looking for donations. People don't realize how much it runs how much it costs to run for office.
It's a lot, yeah.
The mail pieces, the signs, they keep getting stolen. I wish I'd stop taking my signs already. The yard signs, it gets really, really expensive.
Do you think we could go away from those things? Like, because honestly, it's such a waste of money, such a waste of like resources, and it ends up getting littered, and know.
If and I know you watch the news, you're pretty well informed. I wish we could, because if you've ever watched the news and you watch about Ukraine, if you remember, Zelensky didn't do anything but social media to get elected. Yeah. And I wish we could do that, but I don't think we're moving away from that very quickly here, right? Part of the problem is that most of the people in District 5 are 60 or over. A lot of them might not have the resources they need for computers and internet. And to get on a phone for them, sometimes it's a little challenging, right? So the only way to get to them and to reach out to them is actually with paper and walking to them and delivering that leaflet. And of course, everybody wants to get their name out there, right?
Yeah.
Print. Rudy Lopez, go for Rudy Lopez. And I want to make sure that visibility is there. But no, you're right. You think about what it costs to run a campaign, and then you think about the people in need and how much you would much rather be spending that money for people in need.
Dude, yes. So, sorry I said dude. It's just I get really excited about that because, when I ran, I called the TEC, right? And they were like, I go, hey, can I use my campaign money to buy some seniors some fans? Because there was an area in the neighborhood that they didn't have air conditioning. It was hot. And I was like, I just want to buy it and have the neighborhood distribute them, like not put my name on it or anything. And they're like, you want to do that? I'm like, yeah. And they came back because it was such an odd request apparently. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, you can go ahead and do that as long as you're not like soliciting, like to say, hey, you need to vote for me or whatever. Right. And so I did. I bought like 10 fans and used that campaign money for that instead of something else. And it's sad, I mean, like, you could do that,
Yeah, and you just brought up a real touchy subject that touches my heart a lot is the seniors out in our community. I know that the last time that when I ran, I came across a couple. One of my block walkers had called me about a couple that wanted to go out and vote, but they were homebound, but they wanted to get down to the elections office. So the gentleman's name was Amerigo and his wife. They both wanted to go down there, block walk, or vote rather. And I'll never forget the conditions that they were living in. Two things struck me. My dad broke his hip a little more than 2 years ago. And I made sure that, first of all, I was there for him and that he got the services that he needed as a senior.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, he's fine now and he's walking again, right? Amerigo didn't have anyone to help him find those resources, didn't have family to help him. So when I got there, I saw Amerigo, and the same thing had to happen to him. He broke his hip. And the one thing that struck me was that if somebody had taken the time and given him the resources that he needed, he would be walking again, just like my dad. But unfortunately, nobody did that for him. It had been maybe a year or two since he had broken his hip, and now he was homebound. The other thing that struck me about Amerigo is that he had a provider, but with providers now, they only come in for 4 hours a day. So that tells me that for 20 hours, his wife was trying to feed him when he couldn't move anymore, and that he was sitting in a soiled diaper until the provider got there to bathe him and get him out of it. I worked at the VA hospital in high school, and part of my job was to change people that were bedridden. And so I stopped block walking. I stopped my campaign at that time. And the lady that was with me, the one that called me that wanted to help him get to the polls, stayed there with me. And I told her, first of all, there's no way that I'm going to leave this man like this. I stopped what I was doing. I cleaned him up. I changed him, and got him dressed and ready to go. Like I said, there's just no way in my heart that I could leave anybody lying in bed like that. It's struck me that we don't offer the resources and the information that people need to get better, or to have a decent life. Because the resources are there. We just need to make sure that they're getting them.
Yeah. There's a lot of resources, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, Rudy. I appreciate it. Again, he's running for District 5, right?
Correct.
District 5. Reach out, go help. It's getting a little hot, but you can still go out.
Yeah,
go
absolutely.
out and walk. So yeah, and when's the early voting again? It's
early voting starts the 24th of April.
Of April,
the
yeah.
2nd
So it's coming up.
Yeah, right away.
Coming up.
And election day is May 6th.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
awesome.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
One more reminder.
Yes. Go ahead.
You have until the 6th to register to vote. And remember that if you've moved from one district to another, you need to register in that district to vote. So make sure you get out there and register to vote. It's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you haven't registered in a while or you haven't gotten your card, you might want to just check your registration just in case.
Absolutely.
You never know. But thank you guys. This is Alamo City Agenda. Again, we are here at Trailblazer Cafe at Stinson Airport, so you can see the awesome planes behind us. So come on down. We're going to be here till at least 1 o'clock. So we got 3 more interviews to do. So just come on by, grab some coffee, grab some food, and ask some questions. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.